Hi, everyone. Welcome to STP Connect. We will get started in a moment as we are getting ready to go live on Facebook, as we usually do. As usual, we have transcripts available. While we're waiting, everybody, please pick your language. Hi, everyone. Welcome to STP Connect, those of you on Facebook. I am just going to make sure that I share on Facebook what we're doing. And then there we go. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started in just a minute. We have a really good presentation for you today. Before we get started, it is really, really important that you choose a language. And when I say that, I mean the English speakers, because usually the Spanish speakers and Korean speakers know to choose their language. But today it is really important because I have a feeling we're going to get lots of questions in both Korean and in Spanish. So if for you to hear the simultaneous translation to interpretation, you need to choose English. You do that, there's explanation in the chat, but you can do that by going down into, on the bottom of your screen, it says interpretation, and click on English if you're an English speaker. All right. So I'll give you all a moment to do that before we get started. Okay. So my name is Judy Mark. We already have a question. Maybe this question is, oh no, we don't have a question. Okay. You will all have, after this presentation, you will definitely have a chance to ask questions, everybody, because this is a pretty hefty presentation that we just we just wrote today, folks, based on a lot of information, but we just wrote it today. So it's my first time giving this, and I apologize if there are typos in it. All right, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Judy Mark. I'm president of Disability Voices United. I am a parent of a self-determination program participant in Los Angeles area. And Disability Voices United, I don't recognize everybody's name, so I'll talk a second about DVU. Disability Voices United is an organization created by and for people with disabilities and their family members. And they are, our number one priority is ensuring that people with disabilities have choice and control over their lives. And the best way to do that is through the self-determination program. So today we are going to be talking about recommendations to improve the self-determination program. For those of you who are here to find out about really basic information about the self-determination program, we are not going to be doing that today, although we do that often. I encourage you to go into the interchange.org. Look at the chat, the link is there. Go to the interchange.org and you will see probably 40 videos that we have done, including very beginner seminars about the self-determination program. We encourage you to go into the library, watch past ones. We've had tons of guest speakers. We have had lots of great information, lots of presentations. We encourage you to go into that library and learn. But this particular session today is going to be about a lot of the concerns that people have expressed to us about problems with the self-determination program and a series of recommendations that DVU is about to present. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Remember, everyone, please choose a language, especially you should be choosing English if you are an English speaker. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully, oh, you're not seeing anything because I'm seeing nothing. That was weird. I have a blank screen. That is very odd. What is happening? There it is. It's back. That was weird. That was very weird. Okay, let me try it again. Share screen. There. Okay, now are you guys, Nina, are you seeing just the screen of the slide?
Looks perfect, Judy.
Okay, great. All right. So let me get started by saying that we're going to be presenting a set. This is a lot of slides. There are a lot of recommendations. We're going to finalize them after this meeting today based on the feedback you've given us. I have my little notebook out here to take notes on what you say. We have Molly Kennedy, who's going to take notes. Maybe Nina, if you could take a few notes of some additional recommendations that people want us to consider. But let me just get started. So in February, which is basically yesterday or the day before, this past month, so these are very recent focus groups, we sat and met with several groups of folks to talk about the concerns that they have about the way the self-determination program is going. And instead, but we didn't want to just hear people's complaints. We wanted to hear very specific recommendations. Many of you should know that we have been part of the statewide self-determination advisory committee process. And we helped them produce a very robust document of barriers to participation, which included a set of recommendations. A few of those recommendations have been implemented, but most of them have not. And so this set of recommendations will include some that was there, but a lot of new recommendations as well. You know what I was realizing, Nina, is I forgot to text Rick Wood to invite him to come. If you could do that, just because I want to make sure that he's part of hearing this and responding to some things. Thank you. Rick Wood is the co-chair of the statewide self-determination advisory committee. So who did we meet with? We met with participants and family members, and we're meeting with more of them today by speaking to you. We've met with members of the local self-determination advisory committees. We invited the chairs, we invited the members, and we probably had about 20 folks participate in that focus group. We met with almost all of the FMSs that work in the state and one of the FMSs that left the state to find out what they think should be, how improvements could be made with the self-determination program. And we joined the Independent Facilitator Network, the IFN, for their regular monthly meeting during February. And there was a whole bunch of, a few dozen folks at that meeting as well, and got their feedback. So we think we have a pretty comprehensive feedback. We did not, and I know this question is going to come up, we did not meet with a focus group of regional centers. I am very open to do that. I do not have the names of regional centers self-determination staff, or else I know a few of them, but it creates a little bit of an issue because we're not exactly sure who to ask. But I would be more than happy to meet with regional centers because I'm sure they have their own set of barriers that they face with specific recommendations of how to fix things. So happy to add that on at any time. So out of these 4 focus groups and then this SDP Connect today, we've developed a set of recommendations that are targeted to DDS primarily. DDS, in case you don't know, is the Department of Developmental Services. And they are the key state agency that will really that implements the program and it provides oversight. So most of these recommendations are for them. We're also going to send this report to the legislature. These are the elected officials who passed the self-determination law and have a special interest in making sure that it's being implemented correctly. We will also send our report to the regional centers so that they see the the recommendations as well. And I didn't put this on here, but I will make sure to say that we're going to send them to all of the local advisory committee chairs as well for them to share with their committees. So, and we'll make this report available on our website and on our interchange. Okay. So let's get started because there's a lot. So we have recommendations in many categories. Definitely there's some overlap. So some of it is like, I just chose to put it in one category or another. But the first one is about processes and timelines to make sure that things are running more smoothly and at a faster pace for people in the self-determination program. So first of all, they're just DDS. A lot of these recommendations are directly to DDS. DDS needs to establish consistent processes and timelines, meaning you must respond within 10 days or 5 days or whatever amount of days that makes sense. You have to establish consistent processes and timelines for the roles of the regional center in the following areas: in certifying the individual budget, spending plan review, reviewing the changes to spending plans, providing the POS stands for purchase of service, or it's basically the agreement that a regional center sends to the financial management service, the FMS, saying, yes, we're going to pay you for to fund these services, as well as timelines for people in all of the same areas entering their second or third year of the self-determination program. So, right now there aren't good processes. There are some people I've heard can wait months and months for a simple spending plan change review. So we really need to put clear deadlines on these things so that regional centers understand they have to respond to people in a timely way. You should all know, we did this a few SDP Connects ago, that regional centers are all getting 3 new staff, each regional center, to work on the self-determination program. And that means that there shouldn't be as many excuses. They can't be saying we don't have staff to do it, because they're now got 3 staff to implement the self-determination program. The second recommendation in this area is to reduce the number of service codes down to 3. So let me explain what that is. For any of you who are in the self-determination, you know that on your spending plan, one of the things it lists is the service code. Service codes are very important because that is how the state of California can go to the federal government and get matching funds. So maybe for each dollar they spend on self-determination participant, let's say to get it to be supported in employment, they get 50 cents to match that from the federal government. So obviously those service code numbers are very important. The problem is we have way too many, and it becomes an issue with when someone is changing how they want to spend their money, that if it's just moving from taking, let's say, a swim class to doing some pre-vocational work, that even though it's within these broad categories, it complicates things. So it's really important to us that we reduce the number down to the 3, and those 3 are the categories that people now need to abide by. So they are living arrangements, employment and community participation, and health and safety. So basically, if you are in living arrangements, you have one service code that you can use for your staff, you can use for a housekeeper. And if you are trying to move money between how much you're spending on a housekeeper and maybe someone to cook for you and someone who supports you with your daily life activities, all of those things, you can move that money around without a big deal on the back end for regional centers. So that's really important to us. The third recommendation is that DDS provides a directive on the HCBS final rule, which is the settings rule. So right now, all of the services that people have in the self-determination program must be fully integrated into the community. They must be in settings that allow people to have full inclusion. The problem is that DDS has never defined what that means and hasn't informed the regional centers how to work on that. And so DDS is working, I know, right now on a directive on this. They've been working on it for years. I had helped write part of the directive probably in 2015. So it's been many years they've been working on this. And so we really need to get that out so that people, because one of the things I've heard from participants is a participant may want to get a trampoline for their backyard and they're told that's not inclusive. But of course it's inclusive because it's in their home. Remember, the settings rules about the home and community-based services, home. So if it's in your home or if it's in the community, it's okay. What is restricted are those sort of segregated group programs where everybody in that setting has a developmental disability and is receiving regional center services. So something that you're using in your home is naturally considered inclusive. All right. All right, moving on. We have a lot under processes and timelines. Provide a directive to regional centers that the use of generic resources in the self-determination program is no more expansive than in a traditional system. So one of the things that we're hearing is that that regional centers are often requiring people in the self-determination program to jump through more hoops around generic resources than they are in the traditional system. So we want to make sure that people are treated the same. We also need DDS to clarify the term natural supports. I know I'm going through this fast, I apologize. And I'm happy to answer any questions about any of these. And oh, I should mention something. Please put your questions in the chat, and Ed is cataloging all of them and we'll ask them at the end of the presentation. You are also going to have a chance to raise your hand and ask questions verbally or in whatever way you communicate, if you type to communicate. And we will give you that opportunity as well. But don't forget to write down your questions. If you want to give it in person, you want to write it down so you don't forget. All right, so clarifying the use of natural supports. In the most recent directive that came out, they talked about how participants should consider using natural supports. And we're hearing that some regional centers are determining it differently than what the definition is in law. So we want to make sure that people understand it. We want to clarify the roles of the regional center, the independent facilitator, the FMS, and participant in every step of the transition and ongoing process. One of the things that we hear is as people are moving into the program, when they need to have a service code, applied to a particular service, that people are saying to the participant, you need to figure out what service code that is. That is not the responsibility of the participant. That's the responsibility of the regional center service coordinator. We don't in the traditional system have to worry about what our service codes are, so we shouldn't have to worry about that in the traditional system. Provide all information on new directives and guidance to self-determination participants at the same time as provided by regional centers. So folks know that these directives, it's like a set of directions, is sent out to the regional center executive directors, and we never see them. I mean, I see them because I asked to receive them. Many people can join the SDP mailing list from DDS and you will get an email to you, but sometimes that happens several days later. So we want to make sure that everybody gets the information at the same time. That's what self-determination is about. Okay, we're all learning together. Then number 5, regional center decision makers should attend IPPs, budget meetings, and spending plans. We hear this complaint in the traditional system too, where people go to their spending plan meeting or their budget meeting and they're told, I'm sorry, I'm the service coordinator, I have to ask my supervisor. And then even the supervisor says, I'm sorry, we have this clinical team who makes all the decisions, and we're not allowed to participate in the clinical meetings. We're not allowed to hear who's there. So it's really important that a decision maker comes to these meetings so that it will also speed up the process. Participants should be able to enter the SDP at any point and not have to wait until their annual IPP. I'm hearing that that's not happening as much as it was before, but we want to make sure people understand that if you want to go into the self-determination program, you can enter at any time. You should not be told, sorry, you have to wait. If your birthday's in July, you have to wait till July. Okay, you can go in at any time. All right, moving on to recommendations related to the individual budget process. There is this thing called the individual budget calculation tool that you can find on the DDS website. It is really complicated to understand, and it desperately needs to be simplified, desperately. And so what we are recommending is that it not only gets simplified, but it's provided to participants in plain language and in multiple languages like Spanish and Korean, so that everybody understands how regional centers are coming up with these amounts for the individual budget. Another big recommendation we heard from a lot of independent facilitators is that the rates used by regional centers for all services should be made available publicly. One of the things that we know is that the individual budget is based on the rates that are spent on service providers in the traditional system. But there's lots of different rates. There's not just one rate for supported living. There's not just one rate for day program, or so, and it's even the rates are different sometimes within a regional center, and rates are different between regional centers. And so we need to know really what those rates are, and that information needs to be made public so that we're all on a level playing field as we're negotiating for our budget. Number 3, that clarify the rates for funding of social rec services to allow STP participants to add those amounts to their budget. So many of you have heard that funding for social and recreational programs, camp, and non-medical therapies have been restored finally, yay, since last July. Yet very few people are in the traditional system or even getting access to it. However, you know, they're waiting on, many regional centers are waiting because they haven't vendored providers, but we don't need to wait for providers to be vendored. We just need a dollar amount that we can add to our budgets, because we have never been under those restrictions. We can, in self-determination, you can use those funds for social and recreational services. Number 4, clarify that regional centers can consider unmet need in relation to the pandemic. So one of the things that we've been hearing is that people have not been able to spend their first year's budget from the self-determination program because of the pandemic. Let's say they put in that somebody wants to take a horseback riding class, or somebody wants to take a community college course in person, or join a gym. Those things maybe were not safe to do over their first year in the program, but now they would be safer to do, hopefully. And so now we are entering a situation where people are going into budget negotiations and they're being told by their regional center, sorry, you didn't use any of these services, so it doesn't stay in your budget. You know, this is hopefully a one-time ask of DDS to make this clear. I'm hoping we will not continue to have pandemics in our lives, but clearly the person's budget was based on their needs before the pandemic, And so we need to assume that those needs will remain the same. All right. Next is regional centers should not be combining meetings on the individual budget and spending plan. Remember that your spending plan is based on the amount of money that's in your individual budget. So in some cases, regional centers are saying to you, I want to know how much you need, and then we'll decide about your spending plan. And then we'll decide about your budget. Sorry. In some ways, it could be to your advantage because you may have a very, very large spending plan. But if you come in with a very small spending plan because you haven't had time to really think through what your needs are, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So there should be one meeting where you're talking about what your actual needs are based on the traditional system. And then you can go and develop a spending plan based on that amount of money that you have. All right, moving on to spending plans. So the number one thing that we heard from every group was that there needs to be a uniform or standard way for spending plans to look at all regional centers. It is a giant barrier, particularly for the FMSs, who are saying that every spending plan looks so different and that it ends up being a problem with people getting services paid for because the spending plans are all over the place. To me, this is such a simple thing to fix, and it would really, really reduce a lot of the problems. Number two is to provide more clarity on the services and goods directive. That's what we were talking about before. There's some very specific issues that people are facing. We have heard that conservators of adults, who are usually parents, who want to be paid as a service provider or an independent facilitator, are being told they are not allowed to. That is not true. Conservators are allowed to be paid. We know that DDS is going to come out with a clarification on this in the FAQs, or the frequently asked questions section of their website, but it has not happened yet, which is very, very frustrating. So I would really suggest that anybody who is facing this problem, at least at this time, ask for a clarification from DDS. All right. Service codes placed on spending plans should be the responsibility of the regional center, not the participant, the independent facilitator, or the FMS. I made that point earlier. Number four, regional center staff need training on their role in reviewing a spending plan, not approving it. We need to be very clear that regional centers do not approve spending plans. They review them, and they're actually only allowed to review them to look at three things. Number one, could generic resources pay for it? Number two, are these services integrated into the community? And number three, or at your home, by the way. And number three, are these services allowed to be paid for under the self-determination federal waiver, the application we have with the federal government to get funding? So those are the only three ways they're supposed to be approved. I'm not approving, see? They're the only three ways they're supposed to be reviewing it. And then they can ask you questions based on it. All right, that's it. That needs to be really clear in training. Speaking of training, there was a lot of recommendations related to training. Orientations are very problematic. Everybody says this. They are so long, they're so confusing. They need to be shorter. They need to be interactive. They need to be in plain language. And they need to be co-led by participants, families, and local advisory committees. Right now, in many cases, orientations are being led just by the regional center staff. And we need to hear from current participants and family members about how great the self-determination program is and how their lives have changed, to provide that enthusiasm for people. If you have, right now, the current DDS orientation is like 90 slides. I know that the state council is going to be producing a new set of trainings. I have not yet seen what that looks like, but if it's anywhere as long, it's going to be problematic. You know, we really should have maybe 20 slides or 30 slides, and then have a discussion with participants about how, what they, any questions they may have. Number 2, participants and families need additional training on labor laws, the use of independent contractors, and how purchases can be made through their FMS. So everybody, I heard this problem from every single FMS, that families are going to the FMSs and saying, we want to hire a staff for our child, and that person does not want to be an employee, they want to be an independent contractor. The FMSs are saying, I'm sorry, that's not allowed because of California labor law. And then everybody's blaming the FMS. I need to tell you, as a person who truly understands labor laws, because we have to think about how we hire people at DVU. I also have people that we hire for my son, is that an independent contractor is very, very specific type of person in California. It's different in California than it is in other states. Anybody who works the hours you set for them, who is doing the work, the regular work that you need them to do, is an employee. So we need to teach this to participants and family members. We also need to talk about how purchases can be made, and you'll hear a little later about our recommendations for how purchases should be made. Actually, what the biggest thing, even more than what I said before, the number one thing everybody was concerned about is that service coordinators are not trained, that they are constantly saying, either admitting that they don't have the knowledge or giving false information. And there needs to be a training program just for the service coordinators and other self-determination staff that is consistent, that isn't written for one regional center, but is consistent throughout the state, that everybody is hearing the same information and that is comprehensive. And it should be required by all service coordinators, because some service coordinators may have no SDP participants today, but tomorrow they could have 5. And one of the things they need to understand is what their role is and what their role isn't. We also need to make sure that even if they've gone through that initial training program, that they're constantly provided updated information, that new directives are coming out, new ways of new rules about the way the program works, and they need to understand it and not be surprised by it. Number 5, this was a big one for the FMSs, is that the way that they do billing needs to be standardized throughout the state. It can't be 21 different ways at 21 different regional centers. And it's really been quite problematic to get paid. You should know that some FMSs are still not paid from money they laid out for a participant a year ago. And this is why we're losing FMSs in the state. It's because they can't afford to continue to do business. Independent facilitators, a bunch of recommendations there. The recommendations around independent facilitators really ran from empowering independent facilitators, getting more of them, giving them more ability to do a good job, making sure they're getting paid, to, on the other hand, providing more oversight of independent facilitators and ensure they're doing a good job. So you'll see them all over the place here. So number 1, independent facilitators need more training on a regular basis. DDS was supposed to come up with a set of a certification rules and a set of trainings for them that they have yet to do. And I believe that really needs to be done. Number 2, there need to be more independent facilitators. We need to train more. We need to recruit more, particularly in those who speak languages other than English. One of the big concerns I heard from independent facilitators was that they are not getting paid in a timely way. by regional centers. Some of them have waited 6 months after submitting an invoice. So there needs to be a requirement that regional centers pay IFs within 30 days of receiving an invoice, as long as obviously there are no issues with it. And that regional centers, it's very clear in the directive that independent facilitators do not need to be vendors, and regional centers should not be requiring that. Next is that there's additional monies that have been given out this year that they're calling enhanced transition funding. Just nobody knows that it's available, and we need to prioritize who receives that. And based on a lot of the conversations we had with facilitators and local advisory committee members, it is clear of who these communities are that need the extra help. And they include participants and family members who don't speak English, number one, and self-advocates who either have no family support and are doing self-determination kind of on their own, and self-advocates who use alternative communication methods so that meetings may end up taking longer because they may be typing to communicate. DDS should also establish guidance to participants and families about appropriate hourly rates for IFs and person-centered planners. Not everybody agrees with that recommendation, but it's coming. It's coming. I can promise you DDS is going to be doing it. So we need to have recommendations of what those appropriate hourly rates should be. Independent facilitators should not be asking a certain, like, it's $2,500 and all you're getting is a person-centered plan. That is not the way billing works when you're talking about government funds. You are saying you are going to have to bill by the hour, and you're going to have to prove that you worked all these particular hours. You're also not allowed to put in your spending plan a monthly fee to your independent facilitator to help you. They have to bill by the hour. So you can have in your spending plan a total of, let's say $3,000 over the year, but that needs to be spent on an hourly basis. Okay. Next is 7. Independent facilitators should be able to invoice at interim points in the planning process. So independent facilitators shouldn't have to wait until they're done with everything in order to send a bill. So let's say they're helping you with the person-centered plan. They could produce the plan. They can send the plan into the regional center and bill just for that. Then they could do the spending plan, send the spending plan in to show that they did it, and bill for that. I know that many of you are talking to independent facilitators who charge $100 to $200 to $250 an hour. I can tell you that that's a lot of money, in my opinion. I know a bunch of independent facilitators are going to be very upset that I say this, but that is a lot of money. I am almost 60 years old. I worked my whole career, and that is a lot. Some lawyers sometimes charge that per hour. I do not believe that there are very few independent facilitators in the state of California with more than 2 or 3 years of experience, with the exception of the few that worked in a pilot project. And so no one who has 2 or 3 years of experience should be billing at that higher rate. I'm sorry, IFs, you'll probably hate me, but that is a significant amount of money from people's budgets, or from people's for people to get this work done. The other thing is that the independent facilitators should not be able to submit an invoice without providing a proof of the services they provided that is signed off by the participants. So this is sort of these protection pieces where we have heard stories from some families, some participants, that they blew through their whole $2,500 over a person-centered plan that was actually never produced. So this is part of the education we have to do for participants and their families, to have them understand what the expectation should be of their independent facilitators. Ah, did it just go to black?
It did, Judy.
Ah, what is that about? Hold on. I'm going to stop sharing. That is so weird. I apologize. Okay, hold on. Let me just share again. That was very odd. I will try to get it back. Okay, FMS. There were a lot of recommendations for the FMSs because there's been a lot of issues. As you've heard, some of the FMSs are now have left the state or have left the program. So number one, we need to review the rate structure. You know that there's rates of $150, $165 an hour, and that there needs to be a higher monthly rate for those individuals who have larger and more complex plans, spending plans. Number two, the FMSs should be paid additional funding for assisting participants to transition into the program if the hours exceed a reasonable amount of money, a reasonable amount of time, I should say. So there's some people who require 2-3 hours to onboard them. That's just the cost of doing business. The FMS says, no, we don't need any extra money. That's completely fine to onboard them. But there are some individuals who literally can take 3 or 4 days of time, 20-30 hours of working with them. And the FMS is not getting paid for that time. It's one of the reasons FMSs are leaving. And it's one of the reasons FMSs are understaffed and they're not returning your phone calls because they're being overwhelmed by all the work of transitioning people in. The FMS has a very defined role. Their role is not, they are not supposed to be helping you develop your spending plan. They're supposed to be receiving your spending plan, ensuring it's accurate, and then going ahead and helping pay for your services. So their role has been expanded too much, and we need to reduce it. There is also a very, very major need for regional centers to have a point person, not only within the regional center on the self-determination program, but also within the accounting department. And that we hear is going to happen over the next few months at all of the regional centers, hopefully. Number 4, FMSs should be able to provide participants with a credit card number to purchase items in the spending plan. This is something participants have been asking for. Some regional centers are saying it's okay. Others are saying it's not. I can tell you that in other states where they have self-determination, you are allowed to give a credit card number with obviously a limited amount of money on that credit card to the participant to purchase items that have already been part of that spending plan that is part of your IPP. So we got to make this happen because people are losing out on very important things in their lives. Bills are not getting paid that are sometimes life and death for people. So we need to deal with that. Number 5, regional centers must be held accountable for paying FMSs on a semi-monthly basis. It is in state law. We got it in state law last summer that twice a month, regional centers are supposed to pay the FMSs, and we hear that is not happening at every regional center. This is a small little thing, but it's super important that it is that for people who use the sole employer model, many folks, I am one of them, uses our homeowners policy to provide the workers' comp and the liability insurance. This is something that some FMSs feel uncomfortable with, not all, because obviously mine is okay with it. But some feel uncomfortable with it, and the FMSs just wanted to hear a green light on that from the state. Number 7, participants with very small budgets. This is one I actually didn't hear this from anybody, but I threw this in today. They should have their FMS fees paid outside of their budget. So somebody who has a $3,000 annual budget is not going to be able to participate in the self-determination program because $1,500 of that is going to their FMS. So it makes no sense. So for those people with very tiny budgets, we should be able to figure out something that works for them so that they can continue to have choice and control over their lives. And number 8, a requirement that the FMSs respond to their clients within 48 hours. I'm sure that FMSs who are on this call are unhappy with me too. Sorry, I'm here just for the participants and the family members. That is who I am accountable to. And we need to hear back from you. when we call you. Now, we know that part of the problem is that you are really hung up on these ridiculous amounts of complicated bureaucratic things that you're facing. And we're hoping to break all those barriers down so that you can really be more responsive to the participants. Oversight, we're almost done. We have a few more. DDS needs to ensure more consistency across the regional centers. We are hearing there are just 21 different ways of doing it. And even within a regional center, one service coordinator may be doing it one way and a different one will do it a different way. There needs to be more consistency across the state. And that can only happen with DDS, creating more set ways of doing things. We also heard a lot of concerns about the Office of the Ombudsperson. Now, remember, we don't have a permanent ombudsperson yet, and the office has not been fully staffed. In fact, I'm not even sure if they have any other staff besides Katie Hornberger, but there have been a lot of concerns that people have made calls to the ombudsperson and not gotten a response in a timely way, or they haven't gotten the help or information that they need. But we also want to make sure that the ombudsperson uses their role to proactively improve the program, to take all of these recommendations and turn them into changes that really make a difference for people. Number 4, regional centers should not be allowed to discourage people from entering the self-determination program. This is probably the thing I'm most passionate about. Every week I hear a story of somebody saying either, one, I've never heard of the self-determination program, my service coordinator never told me about it, or I asked my service coordinator about the self-determination program and they told me it wasn't right for me. Or they said, oh, it's too complicated, don't do it. That should not be allowed. And we want to root that out wherever we find it. Number 5, we want to make the level of participation in the self-determination program as part of the performance measures that are required by regional centers. So regional centers are required to do a certain amount of things every year. They have a contract with the state and they have to perform at a certain level. And we want to make sure that we have measures in there that look at not only, and I'm going to add this in here, not only the amount of people in, but the racial and ethnic breakdown of those individuals. Advisory committees. As I told you, we met with members of the local advisory committees. They had a lot of really interesting ideas. I love the local advisory committees. I just want to put that out there. I think that the chairs are extraordinary. These are folks who are really trying to improve their program. In so many cases, they're not getting the support they need to really make a difference. So here are their suggestions. They said that they need to have more specific training on their role as oversight. If you look in the law, the local advisory committees are specifically charged with providing oversight of the self-determination program at their regional center. Oversight, and what does that mean? And to really define it for them. Number 2, to require regional centers to support their advisory committees with a dedicated staff member. There are many regional centers where they have staff who are being wonderful and supportive of their advisory committees, but that is not true in all regional centers. There are some regional centers where no one from the regional center actually shows up to the advisory committee meetings, and that is very problematic. There was concerns that the state council is not providing the support they need to the statewide advisory committee. This is something that has been discussed for so many years. The state council has now received $215,000. You could say you're welcome because we helped them get that, to be able to support the statewide advisory committee. And we are really looking to see how they're going to be spending those funds. The statewide advisory committee, by the way, is charged with developing training materials and best practices, which they have never done. They've been around for 5 years, and they have 6 years maybe, and they have never created any training materials, and they have never created best practices. And so that obviously is something I know. I was hoping Rick could be on it. He's not on yet. That that we hope to be seeing them do in the future. Number 5, the state council, let me step back. The local advisory committee is appointed, half of the members are appointed by the State Council on Developmental Disabilities and the other half by the local regional center. The problem is that lots of committees have openings that have never been filled. And that in one regional center in particular, they have like 2 people show up to every meeting. And they keep begging for the state council and the regional center to appoint new members. And it's really quite problematic, especially when people do not show up to a meeting for 6 months or a year. They need to be replaced, and the state council and the regional centers are not doing that. Number 6, there was a very strong view of the by a number of people on local advisory committees that they should have a formal role on their boards of directors, that the regional center board of directors, each regional center board should have a slot for the chair or their designee of the local advisory committee, and that there is a report given by them at every meeting, every board meeting, about the self-determination program. So that was a very strong recommendation from them. Disparities. We had a lot of discussion about disparities. That DDS needs to provide a directive to regional centers to take the racial and ethnic disparities into consideration when developing SDP budgets. So what does that mean? So what we know is that particularly Latinos suffer from really significant disparities in the traditional system, that in almost every regional center except for one, they receive half or less than half the amount of services as whites. So when you have a white person who comes into their budget meeting and that budget is based on the last 12 months of services, they're already at an advantage because they get twice the amount of services as the Latino who's coming into that same meeting. So the regional center should be looking at that and saying, wow, we're seeing these racial disparities. We should be able to provide more services and use as the reason that it's not unmet need, it's not a change in circumstances, but it's the fact that this person has faced systemic racial and ethnic disparities, and that is why we have increased their budget. Number 2, we need to have data by regional center on the enrollment in the self-determination program by race and ethnicity. We don't have that. We barely have gotten data statewide from DDS in many, many months. But I want to be able to see, West Side Regional Center, what is your breakdown? You have 50 participants. How many of them are Latino? How many of them are African American? How many of them are Asian? And how many are white? And how do those relate to the general population in that regional center? Number 3, encourage local advisory committees to provide grants to reduce disparities in enrollment. I know that is the case in many, but not all regional centers, that they are putting out they're asking for proposals specifically to help certain communities who are underserved or who are under-enrolled in the self-determination program, and that money should be targeted for those reasons. Number 4, all training materials should be translated into Spanish immediately. Like that, we should not be delaying. Every directive, every single thing should be translated into Spanish. And then depending on the community and what their language needs are, into other languages. Number 5, that we talked about, that enhanced transition funding, it should be made available immediately to communities facing systemic disparities. And finally, number 6, target equity funding to reducing disparities in the SDP. So the DDS gives away $11 million a year to reduce disparities, and that we should be using some of that funding to target the self-determination program. I believe this is my last one. Outreach. So what we keep hearing is that people have never heard of the self-determination program. I've seen a little bit in the chat that people are saying, what is the self-determination program? Like, this is my first time ever hearing about it. That's a problem because it's been around for several years. So we need to have very specific recommendations related to outreach. So number one, that every traditional consumer should be informed right away. So let's say by March 31st, every consumer receive a communication in their preference, whether it's an email, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a newsletter, in whatever way that works for them to know about the self-determination program. At the beginning, everybody should know. And to do it in an unbiased way, to not say, here, I need to give you this information about the self-determination program, but I don't think it's going to work for you. So in an unbiased way about the STP. And then information should continue to be provided for traditional consumers at their annual IPPs. So not to say, well, I told the person once and they weren't interested, because guess what? People change their minds. We should continue to tell them about it. Number three, consumers who are in the intake process, the 3-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, or even if you're older coming into the regional center system, should be informed about the self-determination program from the day you walk in the door to a regional center. Number 4, consumers should be proactively informed about the $2,500 available to help with transition into the self-determination program. We have heard of people saying, oh, I don't know how to afford paying for an independent facilitator. And then we tell them about the $2,500 and they said, nobody ever told me about that. So people need to be proactively informed. It should be part of that outreach information. Other outreach that needs to be done is to traditional service providers. They are so important, but they have not been brought into the self-determination program. Most of them don't want to have anything to do with it, even though I feel traditional service providers could do a lot of really great things and be very creative in this program. And finally, number 6, that local advisory committees should conduct outreach activities beyond what service coordinators are doing. So they should be going and making presentations at consumer and family support groups. They should be going to school district events. They should be looking at other groups where people with disabilities gather or their families gather, and to be able to inform them about the self-determination program so that people know that they're about these possibilities. All right, that was a lot. I know it was a lot. I'm exhausted from just saying it. I have no idea what time it is. Okay, it's 5:30. That's a lot of time. So I'm gonna now, I know there's probably a million things. Jordan, you there?
Judy, we couldn't hear you for a bit.
Oh, you know what? I know, because I went off I'm afraid to click over to my other. Was that the only time you couldn't hear me, Ed?
Yes.
Okay, phew. Okay, Jordan, go ahead, Jordan.
My question is involving the FMS, and you had a recommendation where your FMS might be able, because I was in the exact same boat. I was in the same, or I like to call it the Titanic as you, where I'm sure you had this experience. That's what you mentioned, that you needed to pay for something like the homeowner's policy that included workers' comp. And if it doesn't get paid in a certain time, then you're SOL, you know, because it's got to be paid. And you mentioned that one of the things you want to present is having access to the credit card.
Right.
I find that very, very hard sell, because I don't think Judy, I'll use you as an example. Judy Marks is going to hand some consumer, here's the credit card number, buy what you need, say from Amazon, and then, you know, you have a limited amount, but then the credit card is still on Amazon, and should that amount go up and you buy something else and forgot that you're using their credit card, it gets charged back to them. So they're not going to hand you a credit card number. My only suggestion, and it's the law, but that that they change it where if you need to buy something in the moment, like the insurance, or maybe you need to buy an item for school and it needs to be bought today, that they allow the consumer and or family member or somebody to purchase it themselves and then get reimbursed. That's the
So
only
Jordan, I
they don't allow that.
100% agree with you, but let me tell you, the federal government will not allow it.
You think they'll allow some consumer to have access to your credit card?
Yes, and they do it in all the other states.
Okay, well,
The other 25 states that have self-determination, they do that.
okay, well, that's
So,
pretty
but
good.
they will not, because remember that when you buy something with a credit card, you could reverse those charges, right? So you should know, we have a little DVU credit card. We have very little money, but we have a little DVU credit card that all my staff have access to. But anytime anybody makes a purchase on it, I get a quick little email that says, your credit card's been used for a purchase at this place. So I'm able to immediately know that this is happening and ask questions if I didn't know, if it wasn't an authorized purchase. That exact same thing can happen. That there can be oversight on these credit card purchases. Reimbursements are really quite problematic because the federal, I believe it should be allowed. I think it's ridiculous that they don't allow it. Maybe that's something we could go to the federal government and ask them to change. But right now, that is a restriction, and the feds will not allow it. It's not the state, it's not the regional centers, it's not the FMS.
Okay, I just think that's gonna be a hard sell with even I know 28 states do it, but I think it's still gonna be a hard sell because it's not five people in your
I
office.
don't think it will be at all. And I can
Okay.
tell you that the FMSs are going to start doing it if they're not already. So get ready, people. Put on your seatbelts. It's going to start happening soon. Tim Jin, go ahead, Tim.
I finally got my new iPad from my self-determination out of my budget, but since we forgot to list that I need a case and a mount for my chair, my FMS won't order it for me, even though I am under budget for my iPad.
So
my service coordinator wants me to revise my spending plan. She indicated that I should write iPad accessories, just for a case and a mount, even though we are under budget. My new iPad is my desk drawer because I can't use it without a case. It's a bit silly to think anybody would be using an iPad without a case. My FMS wants to order me the case that I need, but they can't because there is no flexibility from the regional centers and the spending plan. This is just an iPad case. Just imagine if this was something more serious, like transportation or medical needs. The rideshare driver can't take you back home because you are out of 10 miles radius and your spending plan limits you to certain miles a day? What?
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to get to, is that there are these processes, the things I talked about in the very first slide, is that there needs to be clear processes for the way that the system works to understand that the regional center does not need to have a box checked because you are spending, an extra $25 on a case for an iPad. We don't have to be that nitpicky, and that the only way this is going to change is if DDS tells regional centers this is what you have to do. This is the regional centers themselves live in fear of an audit, which I think is ridiculous, because I wish they lived in fear of an audit for some of the things I've heard they do and they've done to me. Honestly, where people have looked at my son's IPP who have nothing to do with my son, they've gone into the system and look at my son's private IPP. Why aren't we getting audited on that? But they're worried about getting audited on a $25 case for an iPad. I mean, this is ridiculous. So we really, really need to figure out the better processes so that things can move more smoothly. That's a great example, Tim, and I may be stealing it from you when I talk to DDS next. Lourdes, you know what? Let me take a couple questions from the chat. Go ahead, Ed.
Certainly. I'm getting a notification that my internet connection is unstable. So if I cut out, please let me know.
Okay.
Hopefully
I got the same one too.
That's weird. Hopefully I won't cut out. So Linda Chan Rapp asks, of the 3 recommended spending plan categories, into which category would financial management services fall?
It always falls in living arrangements. I don't know why. It makes no sense to me, but it always falls in that one.
Fabulous.
But guess what, Linda? You don't need to worry about that. That is the job of the regional centers to know that. So it's like, why do we care? That is not our problem. That is the problem of regional centers, to worry about those small things.
Thank you, Judy. I have another question. I'm going to ask people, please don't use the chat. I'm going to pop this Spanish question in the chat for Lorna, our Spanish interpreter, to translate. So please refrain from using the chat until she's done. Also, before she starts, if you have not selected a language, please select a language now. I'm going to repeat because some folks just came in. If you haven't selected a language, please select your language now. Otherwise, it will cause issues with the translation. Thank you. And Lorna, the question is now in the chat. Oh, and there's an additional comment as well, right on the heels of that, since I didn't know what that was about. There's a comment from Lourdes saying, I have been told that the Self-Determination Advisory Committee in Valley Mountain Regional Center approved a purchase of $10K for their members for clothing. Is that legal?
No, it is not. But I don't believe it. Is there anybody from the Valley Mountain Regional Center here? Please raise your hand. Because I don't believe that. I can tell you that the Valley Mountain Regional Center just contacted DVU and just bought a whole bunch of our manuals, which I will advertise right now, our Think Outside the Box manual. And they're paying for it to be translated into Spanish, people. So we will have a new edition, which is completely appropriate use of their funds. So is Mariella here? Is anybody from Valley Mountain Regional Center here at this meeting who can, all right, I'm going to follow up on that right after this meeting, because I think that might be a rumor that is not true. So, you know, rumors are rampant in our community, folks. They're not always true. Oh, wait, Fernando, thank you. Go for it, Fernando.
Yeah, actually, there's more substance to that than a rumor. But to what degree and who approved is what we haven't defined yet. But we did hear the dialogue. We heard the conversation back, but we at this point do not know who was the authorizing party around that. But the fact is that there was those type of funds allocated for some kind of T-shirt, jersey, or something like that.
Griselda, you're from Valley Mountain. What's going on there? Griselda, are you from Valley Mountain? Yeah, go ahead and unmute. We can hear you. Go ahead, Griselda.
Sí, señora Judy. Sí, señora Judy. Yo estoy en el comité y soy miembro del comité. Y el comité votó que se compraran chamarras y se destinaron $10,000 para esas chamarras, solamente para miembros del comité. Y fue en el comité pasado. Yo nada más estoy en espera de que me lleguen las minutas y las notas que hicieron para yo voté que no, porque no encontré una razón suficiente de cómo les iba a ayudar en la compra de las chamarras a las personas que están haciendo la transición para autodeterminación. Y Mariela se abstuvo, la chair, Mariela se abstuvo de votar y algunos otros se abstuvieron, pero ganaron y se destinó ese dinero para la compra de esas chamarras. Y el director, Tony Anderson, lo único que dijo fue que el dinero se tenía que gastar. Ya, así de sencillo. Yo no sé qué otra cosa legalmente puedo hacer yo. Yo no sé si ICC me respalde o usted me respalde, pero yo he estado haciendo mi investigación y qué tipo de queja puedo poner, porque yo no estoy de acuerdo. Yo soy parte del comité y fui la única que voté que no y no estoy de acuerdo. Allí hubieron varias opiniones de algunas mamás que hablan inglés y español y les negaron una membresía por $40 a una mamá para que su hija tuviera acceso a un club de trampolines y se lo negaron dentro de autodeterminación, argumentando que la niña no iba a tener socialización dentro de ese club porque era algo que era individual y era algo privado, que solamente podían pagar la cuota de $40 por la membresía siempre y cuando existiera un grupo para que la niña pudiera socializar. Esas son las quejas y hay muchas quejas al respecto, pero no, yo no estoy de acuerdo.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Like, I honestly am so stunned by this that I can't believe it. I'm going to follow up personally after this meeting with the chair and with the executive director of the regional center. There is very, very clear rules and guidelines by DDS on how the money can be spent. And that buying jackets for the committee members is definitely not one of them. So I will follow up with it because it's really important that the local advisory committees do their job the right way, and that they have the credibility by the community. And so thank you for bringing it to my attention. I appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Lourdes, go ahead, Lourdes.
So what I wanted to say is I'm finding that Hispanic families, and I'm aware that other ethnicities are having that same situation where they're independent facilitators for families with low POS or no services, no POS at all. And when you come across to the regional center and you're talking about unmet needs, yeah, they'll give you respite. Yes, they'll give you like one more thing. But when you start telling them this is what the unmet category of lifestyle needs is, they're starting to look at you like you just grew a second head because you're asking for more than a second service. And there's like, oh, this person had no services whatsoever. It had $4,000, $300, and you're raising the budget to, $10,000 because there was never no service. They're looking at you like, how dare you? How could this? And I'm like, this family needs the services. They need help now. But like, there's gonna be way more than, to get this person into self-determination. You need to be working with them way more because the reality is like, you have to go to due process. You have to win those services outside of self-determination. And then you have to redo the budget, do the whole shebang of self-determination to match what the reality needs to be done.
I agree.
So if you could add that into like one of the categories, that will really reflect what it is going to be happening and what it really is. Because there's families that want to go in, they can go in, but they're not going to be at that point.
I got it. Great suggestion. Thank you. Connie and Harvey, go ahead.
Hey.
Judy, outstanding. I wish you ruled the world. I just want to say to everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I should rule the world.
I know you should be head of DDS and the DD Council.
Help.
And
Thank
I know
you.
you yourself, but I just want to say we are so lucky to have this kind of information that we're not getting anywhere else.
And everyone on this Zoom should be writing their congressman, their assembly person, and their senator.
Okay, make your statement. Because
bottom line, to me, the most important thing by far is the whole foundation of this is a person-centered plan.
it's the only thing you're missing.
Go back to it. It's everything. It's a
Yeah. So I have to admit, having written this whole thing really, really fast,
Okay.
that I did have a slide on person-centered planning. Yet I went through all of our notes from all of our focus groups and really didn't find any specific recommendations on it. But I have some in my head, so I'm going to add that in.
Please,
Thank you.
it's the,
And the other thing about conservators being paid, that's a bunch of crap. IHSS people, over 75% of them are a family member and they get paid.
Yep.
so thank you again, Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Jin Suk. Oh, no. Jin Suk, you're not next. I'm sorry, Jin Suk. Suli.
Hello.
Hi.
So I work with mostly non-English speaking families. So I work with the Korean community mainly, and I really need to raise awareness of an issue. And this is caused by the inconsistencies between regional centers in terms of how they determine SDP budget. And it's really impacting minority families. So I'm gonna give you some examples, real life examples, compare Northern California and Southern California clients. In Northern California, so there is smaller Korean population, so therefore they don't have many Korean speaking service coordinators, so or service providers in general. So when I bring up the issue to the coordinators, they agree that there's a need. So they include translation interpretation as an ongoing support for the family, and they agree to put that into the SDP budget. And let me tell you how the families are using this budget. So they are using that fund to select providers who are Korean speaking and hire their own interpreters. So that could be like friends who understand disabilities and who are Korean speaking, they feel comfortable with them. So I think that's how SDP should be done, giving the families choice, independence. And let me tell you about what's happening in Southern California. Yeah, I'm going to mention Orange County Regional Center because I just couldn't get them to agree with the point. So they will fund translation and interpretation as a one-time service, only to be used for IPP meetings or IPP document translation, and they will not budge. I asked them to include that as an ongoing support and include that into SDP budget. Their reasoning, they have service coordinators who speak Korean, and they want to make sure the funds are used only for those purposes, IPP translation. And I explained to them how, it's being done in other regional centers. So in Southern California, so families don't see increase in the budget based on their language needs. So they have to still rely on service providers who are English speaking. So they cannot hire their own interpreters as they like. So they're back to, having no choice. They're kind of stuck. So it's kind of ironic, right? Because in Southern California, there are more Korean speaking service coordinators and service providers, but they will not fund additional funding for the families. So it's a problem. So yeah, I feel like there should be something done, make translation interpretation as an ongoing service to be included in the budget.
I already wrote it down. It's going to go in there. I love it.
Okay.
Because that's not just about Korean speakers, but it's about anyone who speaks languages.
Right.
Different language.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Chantiel Talley.
Hello. I actually work with public partnerships, the FMS that recently left. And so we wanted to join this, but I wanted to speak to the idea of the credit card. So there are some states that offer debit cards that are issued to each family. And those debit cards have that preset budget amount for whatever that service is that allows them to purchase items. And then that family is able to then use that to go online, buy stuff on Amazon, all those different things. So just to give some more color to the idea of the credit card number, really it's more so a debit card that is actually specific to that person. And each FMS will have a different vendor that they use. So there's some security guards that are in place there. I know there was some concern previously on the call about, FMS is just giving out their credit card number. And that's not necessarily the case. It's more so a debit card that really is specific to that family, gives them the flexibility that they need. And so when making that recommendation, it may be good to kind of add that context there as well. It allows for FMSs to provide reporting, tracking, We can shut off the cards if we find that there's any fraud. There's all types of safeguards that are in place when the debit cards are an option.
That was phenomenal. I was going to call it a debit card. I wasn't sure if that was a commonly used plain language term. I'm just going to change it to that, and I'll explain it if people don't understand the term. So yeah, I met with the head of an FMS on Monday who told me they do it in many other states, and that is exactly the way they do it as well. So thank you. It's great to meet you, and I hope that you guys will come back and give services soon in California.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Jin Suk, and then I'm going to go back to you, Ed. Go ahead, Jin Suk. Oop. Can you unmute, Jin Suk? There you go.
Hi, Judy. Thank you. My question is about service providers' business license. I have a client who already transitioned to SDP as of February 1st, but FMS requires the clients that all his service providers need to present their business license for enrollment or verify through the local business license office that they don't need a business license to become a service provider. And the client uses bill pay model. So have you ever heard of this? And then, even though it is true, and then the service providers need to ask the local business license office to verify that they don't need the business license. But if they don't understand the service providers, the services, and then it takes more time to enroll. So in the case, what should we do?
Which FMS is this?
GT Independence.
Really? Well, GT, are you here? I saw several of you come in. I can tell you this, that I have not heard that requirement be used. Hey, Teracel, can you speak to that or put something in the chat about that? Because I've never heard that requirement. I mean, maybe it's for something like special.
No, Judy. No,
Go ahead,
absolutely.
Teracel.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. Actually, according to the ACBS waiver application, under every service code, it will state one of the requirements is not a state license, but a business license required by your local jurisdiction. And it also states that the FMS is responsible for verifying that you meet this qualification. So one of the things that we're doing now is we're sending that snippet. So when we get a vendor, let's say if they're under a certain service code, we are checking the ACBS waiver application. If it states that, we are then, sending a snippet of that from the waiver application to the vendor. So let them know we still have to verify it. It doesn't say a state license, but it says a business license as required by your local jurisdiction.
So what kind of businesses have a business license? So like a staff person doesn't have a business license, right? Somebody who's on your personal, a direct support professional wouldn't have one.
Judy, I had to do it to hire like someone who's helping me write a book. They had to fill out all this paperwork until they had a business license or they wouldn't approve it.
Wow. Are any of the other FMSs making these requirements? I haven't had this situation personally. So I just want to make sure it's not a giant barrier because, sometimes people are hiring Teracel. I could see, here's an example. It's like we have, for my son, a former nanny that now has a master's degree and is like an amazing human being and is sort of comes in and out of my son's life helping with things, but she doesn't have her own business. She's just doing things on an ad hoc basis. Is that not allowed? I've never heard this. Wait, somebody's saying that
Hi, Judy.
main cell's not
Sorry.
requiring it, it says.
Yeah, no, I was trying to unmute.
Okay.
When you're talking about individual, there is an option under the HCBS waiver for individuals to work as long as agencies and those requirements. But when we ask for certain things for business license, it's not for us to say yes or no. We're just presenting the requirements. If it is not required for the job duties or the function, we just need something to show so we have that verification as far as the audit. If someone is a theater coach, they probably have to have a business license to be able to do theater coaching here in the state of California. We're just asking for them to provide that information to us. We're just here to verify it. We're not saying it's going to keep them from providing the service or not. We just need to make sure that they meet those requirements that are in the standards.
So even
All right, so
my question is, even though that is not the area code to present the business license, but I don't think many service providers who are very close to the family, they don't want to go through the verification process. So it is very complicated. So yeah, I'm not sure that is good for the improvement of SDP program. So I'm not sure about this. So
yeah, let me look into it. I've never heard that before. So let me look into it. Okay. We are getting close to our end time. So Ed, is there like a pressing question that was in the chat?
I'm sure there are a couple. Just give me just 1 second to scan. Yes, there is. So this is from Carolina, I'm sorry. She says, hello, I started the STP transition in August of 2021. My daughter has still not transitioned. My IF and I have had about 5 to 8 meetings with my service coordinate with my CS. There have been 3 since August of 2021. I'm sorry, I don't know what CS stands for. My service coordinator and my SDP coordinators. We were promised a budget last month so we can create our spending plan, but the regional center won't provide it. We've now been told by the supervisor that his director will not provide us the budget until we show them our spending plan. Is this procedure in protocol? Why are they not showing us a budget? How can we prepare our spending plan when we don't know what is in the budget? In short, what can we do?
Yeah, I've heard that before. The spending plan, the budget, this is why in our set of recommendations, right at the beginning, we talked about timelines for the budgets. You should ask for a budget meeting and, within 1 to 2 weeks, you should be able to have one. And the regional center should be providing you with your last 12 months of expenses, as well as have a discussion about unmet need and change in circumstances. That there doesn't need to be a giant delay in that. Nobody should be waiting months for that. It should happen immediately. There doesn't, people sit there and say, I'm waiting for the budget for my regional center. There's nothing about that needs to happen. Once you have a budget meeting and there's an agreement on the budget, then you should be able to move forward.
Carolina, I'm so sorry to
many budget meetings already.
Yeah.
But there's no agreement. Is that the case? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So honestly, just say, what is your final offer, people at the regional center? And if the final offer is X amount of money, then you go to fair hearing, which we call unfair hearing, but you need to take it to the next level. You need to fight for it. You can't just sit and delay. All right. Another thing that you can do, by the way, is you can accept a certain budget and then go to fair hearing for the services you feel you should be able to add to your budget. So at least you get started in the self-determination program. I've seen a number of people successfully do that. All right, it is 1 minute to 6. I know that I see lots more hands up. I apologize that we haven't gotten anybody. My presentation was an hour. I did not realize it was going to be that long. I apologize. But getting these recommendations is really important to DDS. Very specifically, I'm able to save everything that you put in the chat, so I'll be able to see your comments. If you have any other comments, there are any other suggestions for recommendations, please email us. I put it in the chat, but email it to us at info@dvunited.org, info@dvunited.org. We will take into consideration every suggestion you have. We're hoping by the end of the week that this report, this set of recommendations will be sent to DDS and the legislature. So we thank everybody, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. And remember that there's still a lot going on with the self-determination program. We encourage you to go to your local advisory committee meetings, hold those committee meetings, those committees, lift them up and hold them accountable. So we appreciate everybody. Have a great couple weeks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye all.